wait for the stream to start. Okay, good. Let me just take a sip of water.
I will let you know when it is loading right now. I will let you know when it starts.
Okay. Yeah, but the pass. Yeah.
Okay, you are being streamed.
Okay, cool. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. A couple of things I want to throw out of this debate. First of all, if anyone in government wants to run things about right to free speech, there is no absolute right to free speech insofar as all speech is sanctioned in one way. Even if not legally, then in terms of social disapprobation, insofar as there are always people who are going to disagree with you, it might sanction you in terms of the way they interact with you. This means that the right to speak does not also mean the right to be free from the consequence of that speech. Secondly, know that the right to speak is only an extension of the right to maintain and express your identity. Therefore, if one speaker utilizing the right to speech also encroaches on the identity of another, this goes beyond their right to exercise that right. It is legitimate, therefore, to limit them. The third implication of this is insofar as there's no absolute free speech, the debate can only be about the bar as to when we limit free speech, i.e. it's about the utility versus disutility of this policy. What is this debate also not about? It's not about the overall influence of the right wing. Note that the right wing exists anyway. Jordan Peterson still has his YouTube channel, Breitbart still exists, InfoWars still exists. This is something that exists regardless of the motion. The motion is about whether we can limit their negative influence within this particular space of universities for a particular comparative as well. Because I have to opt into InfoWars and Jordan Peterson's YouTube channel to be faced with their ideas. If they're at my university, I'm actively forced to opt out because there's advertisements about this, because they're speaking in my union chamber, because people around me are discussing this. It's far hard to opt out, and that's the comparative. Thirdly, to throw out open government. Yes, I will say the right is pissed anyway, because what the right is pissed about anyway, and what the moderates are being skeptical about, is things like identity politics and intersectionality. They think the left no longer represents the working class. These movements are a consequence of that shift in the left, not the cause, which means the doubt exists anyway. But even if Ahmed is right, there's a huge amount of people on the left and moderates who think differently, who think that the left should no longer only represent the working class, but should also represent the intersectional struggles of minorities in terms of ethnic and gender identities. These are literally millions of people. So if they lose some credibility from some amount of people, we lose the same on our side of the house. It's completely uncomparative. I also don't think it's about fucking conservatives, because people are not being deplatformed for the ideas that they are presenting, but the mode of communication. You can say your conservative argument why you don't like the French Revolution, but don't misgender people while doing it. Similarly, we can speak both left and right-wing ideas, but we cannot use hate speech while doing it. If someone feels uncomfortable about being unplatformed for hate speech, I'm perfectly fine with it being uncomfortable. Lastly, I don't think this is about people knowing how to engage with right-wing ideas. Most debaters don't think Jordan Peterson should get the right to speak. Most debaters make speeches on a daily basis about why he's stupid. I think they're still able to refute arguments without having to see the guy speak. But secondly, if people do want to disengage, I think they have a right to. I'm not sure why I should care. Let's talk about the harms of the type of speech we see. And it's not just Jordan Peterson, it's Tucker Carlson, who is actively promoting the idea that black people are at their own fault for being shot by the police. It's Milo Yiannopoulos, who is openly racist. What are the harms of this speech? First of all, it's an active denial of identity. The fact that who you are is not recognized by a certain individual who not only doesn't recognize you, but vehemently tries to convince others that you should not exist, or that you even do not exist in the first place. Which means not only is this a direct attack on your identity, but it invokes memories of all the day-to-day interactions you had with discrimination, say microaggression, meaning it's a trigger to previous trauma. But secondly, this becomes worse insofar as the university openly condones this. For a lot of minority groups who left conservative backgrounds in order to achieve mobility, not just economically, but socially, and be a more accepting environment, universities are academic sanctuaries, the place where you are supposed to exercise your identity away from the community that is shackling you. This means that when the university condones this, you feel that your sanctuary is no longer safe, and it signals a move away from protecting your identity, and you fear what is going to happen in the future and whether there's going to be rollback of your own protections. But it also means you believe the university is not on your side. So you're not going to report things like sexual harassment at your lectures. You're not going to go to the vice dean to complain about admission processes. You're not going to talk about your experiences because you just feel you're going to be dismissed. And the feeling of shame of being dismissed is something that means that people don't report these issues, and these issues don't get prosecuted. They don't get dealt with within the university. This particularly becomes horrible because you feel that insofar as these people come and make pseudoscientific scientific claims that sound convincing. You fear that friends around you might start to believe this. So you're less likely to talk to your friends about the things that you are worried about the struggles that you face, which means that you lose support structures insofar as you fear that those support structures are moving away from you. The consequence of this, therefore, is that people feel that their identity and their very existence is being threatened. This is particularly important because know that trauma is very often hard to put into words. Insofar as you are trans, but other people are not, it's hard for you to explain what gender dysphoria is in words that other people might understand within their vocabulary. It's hard for you to explain what it means to be misgendered, which means that at some points, when you are dismissed because of this, when you're told that you're a wimp, to quote open in government, if I'm told I'm a wimp for doing this, what I'm going to feel is, A, I'm not going to talk about these things in the first place, but secondly, we encourage victim self-blame, insofar as victims think maybe I am the one at fault here, maybe I should try to accommodate others, but others are hurting my identity. I think this is completely unfair. I think it's incredibly important, especially for the developing world. In countries with ethnic tension, like South Africa, where there was apartheid, in countries like Indonesia or Malaysia, where being LGBTQ is illegal, very often universities are the only place that can provide some kind of sanctuary where you can express your identity. This means that at the end of the day, we on our side of the house, we provide an opportunity for individuals to have their identity protected. Why are these no platforming movements important? First of all, even if they don't succeed in no platforming, they create a visible safe space. There are amount of individuals who are willing to risk even their academic career by staging walk-ins, by taking down statues, by protesting and not going to lectures. You see that there's a large amount of individuals who care about you and want to grant you protection, which makes you feel more safe, but gives you a community you can reach out to. But secondly, they're relatively efficient. Opening government concedes there's a large amount of them, so they amass a large amount of people. But secondly, insofar as the media covers these protests, this means that universities get negative publicity. They're called out as non-exclusionary or racist. Insofar as young individuals who are now more progressive are likely to go into these universities, this means that there's a harm for these units. Before I explain why closing government.
Who decides what the criteria for deplatforming is?
I think largely, given that you need a large amount of people to deplatform for this to be successful, I think there's probably broad consensus about things that are not good in society. I think things people can agree on, things like misgendering, things like promoting racism, quite clear open government defines this in this way. Insofar as you get negative media scrutiny, and most of the young people are becoming increasingly progressive, increasingly socialized into intersectionality and social movements like Me Too, like pop stars like Beyonce, Cardi B, who are promoting all of these kinds of things. This means that unis lose admissions compared to other competitors. This is why they did not hire Jordan Peterson as a fellow, because they feared the reaction of these movements. This also means, A, that we get an incentive from these people to maybe moderate and curate their behavior, because they have academic incentives as well. So Jordan Peterson is going to say, I was never against gendering people. I just thought they shouldn't be imposed on me, but like, fine, I'm going to call people by their pronouns because they also want to be an academic fellow. But secondly, we create an incentive for universities to change other practices, to change admissions processes, to create safe space at university, to respond more to minority students, to represent staff from minority backgrounds. Because insofar as they know that there's a mass of people who are willing to deplatform someone in the Oxford Union Chamber, they know that these people might react to other things. So we create an inherent incentive for unis to change other practices outside of deplatforming, especially important in the developing world. There's no external pressure from governments to do this. This needs to be done intrinsically. For all of these reasons, vote for opening opposition.
I would like to thank